In 1793, a ship docked in Bristol, carrying something worth more than gold. Not spices, not silk, sugar, and the men who unloaded it didn't get paid, they were owned. That's where most people think the sugar story starts, with slavery, with plantations, with the Caribbean. But the real story starts 8,000 years earlier on an island most people have never heard of, New Guinea. Around 6000 BC, farmers on this island were chewing on thick stalks of a grass that grew wild in the lowlands. The stalk was fibrous and tough, but if you chewed long enough, something happened. A rush of sweetness hit the back of your throat, unlike anything else that existed. They called it pondi. We call it sugarcane. For centuries, it stayed on that island. Then traders carried it to India, and that's where everything changed. Around 350 AD, somewhere in the Gupta Empire, an Indian chemist figured out how to do something nobody had done before. Instead of chewing the stalk, he pressed it, boiled the juice, and let it dry into solid crystals. The world's first refined sugar. He didn't know it at the time, but he'd just created the most desired substance on Earth. Word spread fast. Arab traders picked it up, carried it across the Middle East, and planted it everywhere the climate allowed. By the time the Crusaders arrived in the Holy Land in the 11th century, they tasted it for the first time and lost their minds. A French chronicler wrote that the soldiers found honey reeds and ate them greedily. They took samples back to Europe, and the continent was never the same. In medieval Europe, sugar wasn't food, it was medicine. Physicians prescribed it for stomach problems, fevers, sore throats. Apothecaries sold it behind counters like a drug. A single pound cost more than a laborer earned in a week. Kings kept it locked in wooden chests called sugar boxes. Only the extremely wealthy could afford to cook with it, and they used it to show off. Elaborate sugar sculptures called subtleties were displayed at royal banquets. Edible art made purely to demonstrate that you had enough money to waste it. But here's the problem. Sugar needs heat, lots of it, and Europe was too cold to grow sugarcane at scale. So Portugal looked south. In the 1400s, Portuguese colonizers arrived at the island of Madeira and realized the climate was perfect. They cleared the forests, planted sugarcane, and needed labor, enormous amounts of it. Cutting sugarcane is brutal work. The stalks slice skin. The mills crush fingers. The boiling houses run at temperatures that cook the air. No free person would choose this job, so they didn't use free people. The transatlantic slave trade didn't start with cotton or tobacco. It started with sugar. The first enslaved Africans transported to work European plantations were sent to sugar islands, Madeira first, then the Canaries. Then, as colonization spread, to Brazil and the Caribbean. By the 1700s, the island of Barbados alone was producing more export value than all of England's North American colonies combined. That value was built on the bodies of enslaved people who worked until they died, were replaced, and forgotten. In Britain, the average person consumed 4 pounds of sugar per year in 1700. By 1800, it was 18 pounds. The price had dropped because the supply had grown, and the supply had grown because the brutality had scaled. Every spoonful cheaper than the last one because somewhere the cost had been transferred to someone who didn't get a choice. By the 19th century, sugar was everywhere, in jam, in biscuits, in tea, in medicine, in baby food. The British working class, who could never afford luxury before, now had one thing the rich had always had: sweetness, and they wanted more of it. Then came the 20th century, and a question nobody wanted answered. In the 1960s, a British physiologist named John Yudkin started publishing research. His argument was simple and terrifying. Sugar, not fat, was the primary driver of heart disease. He had data, he had studies. He wrote a book in 1972 called Pure, White, and Deadly. The title alone told you everything he thought about it. The sugar industry read it and panicked. Documents uncovered decades later showed that an industry group called the Sugar Research Foundation paid scientists at Harvard to publish research shifting the blame away from sugar and onto fat. They didn't fake data. They just funded the studies that got the answer they wanted and buried the ones that didn't. The scientists who took the money didn't disclose it. The research got published in the most prestigious medical journal in the world, And for the next 50 years, fat became the villain. Low-fat everything. Low-fat yogurt, low-fat cookies, low-fat salad dressing. The problem was that when food manufacturers pulled the fat out, the food tasted like cardboard, so they put something else in to compensate. Sugar, the same industry that funded the research telling you fat was killing you, was quietly loading your healthy food with the thing they'd been defending all along. And governments, following the science that had been bought, told you to eat less fat and more carbohydrates for decades. Yudkin died in 1995, professionally discredited, largely ignored. His research was only fully vindicated years after he was gone. Too late to matter to him, exactly on time to matter to you. Right now, the average American consumes 17 teaspoons of added sugar per day. The recommended limit is 6 for women, 9 for men. The global sugar industry is worth over $100 billion annually, and the countries with the highest sugar consumption have the highest rates of obesity, type 2 diabetes, and heart disease. That Indian chemist in 350 AD who pressed the cane and watched it crystallize had no idea what he'd started. He just found a way to make something sweet last longer. It lasted 1,700 years. It built empires, funded slavery, corrupted science, and rewired what humans eat. And it's sitting in your kitchen right now, in a bag, next to the kettle. The most dangerous things always look harmless.